These are the instructions for my cabinet for my fire extinguisher project. For all my pieces, I've already folded down on all the score lines. So it's just a matter of folding down on the score lines and then properly burnishing those folds. So next I have two pieces that look like this. So they're relatively long and narrow and they have 3 score lines, and I've just folded down on the score lines. So I've constructed this file so that it can be cut on a 12-inch by 12-inch cutting mat. So these little pieces are extension pieces to make my cabinet tall enough. So the score lines form 2 strips at the top of my piece and 1 strip at the bottom. I'm going to take one of my edge pieces. I have a tab on my right hand side, and the tab at the bottom here goes straight, whereas on the other side of it has a little wedge cut off. I'm just putting glue from the score line to the edge on that side tab, and I'm making sure that the straight edge is going up against my panel like so. And I want that score line to be right up against the edge of my panel. I'm going to do that on the other side as well. I'm taking my piece that has the tab on the left hand side and the straight edge also on the left hand side. I'm putting glue all over that tab, and I'm just gluing my piece down to that longer panel like so. So this extends my panel by 1 inch on either side, making it 13 inches, which is something I couldn't have cut on my 12 by 12 mat. I'm going to do the exact same thing with the other piece. I'm gluing down that straight edge on the left hand side of my piece, and then my straight tab is right up against this side of my panel. So next I have my 2 panels that look like this, and each have little tabs at the end. So I'm going to take one of the panels that I've just glued together, and then I'm going to take one of the shorter panels with the longer tabs on either side. So I have that long strip at the top on this piece, and I have a long strip at the top here as well. I'm just covering that large tab with glue, making sure that the score lines are even on the top and the bottom. And then I'm just laying my piece flat like so. So the cut edge of my longer piece is right along the score line of my tab, and the score lines at the top and at the bottom are nice and lined up. So I'm going back to another one of those pieces that I've just assembled. So I'm putting glue all along that larger tab. Piece on my right hand side is right up to the score line on my tab. The top and the bottom are even. I'm just going to fold that down into place. I'm just making sure that that cut edge is right up against the score line of that larger tab. So next I have the second one of those smaller pieces. I'm putting glue all over the tab. I'm placing my tab right up against the edge of my longer piece, and then gluing it in place. So my score line at the top and at the bottom are even. And so next I want to reinforce the sides of this. So I have these panels that I've cut out of craft board. I have my shorter piece of craft board to reinforce that short side. So I'm just going to glue that into position. So I'm just putting glue on the underside, gluing that between the score lines, making sure that I'm not going over those score lines. It's just there to reinforce my box. And then I'm going to do that with the second one as well. Just glue it in. Then I have the rest of my panels that are the same height, 4 of one length and 4 of another. Putting glue on the underside of one of the short ones, and then just gluing it to the end. I want to stack them up as perfectly as I can on top of one another. From the end of that shorter panel to the end of my piece, I'm going to add more glue. I'm going to take one of my larger panels and just glue it from the very edge of my shorter piece all the way along. And again, I want it as much as possible exactly on top of the previous layer. And then I'm going to flip my piece over, and my short piece is going to fit right at the end. So I'm just going to glue this on top. So now I'm doing the exact same thing with my 4 remaining panels. So I've got my panel at the very end. I'm going to leave that for now, but the panel that's in between the sides that I've already reinforced, I'm going to glue my panel down. I just want to make sure that everything fits nicely between the score lines. I'm just using my bone folder, applying a little bit of pressure to make sure that those panels stick. So I have my box flat on my mat, and I'm putting glue on my last tab, and then I'm folding that side over, and I'm gluing the cut edge of my piece to the tab. I want the score lines even at the top and the bottom. So now that it's all attached, I can glue in my last reinforcement piece. I'm putting glue on the underside of it. I'm just inserting it into my box. I want it to be within the score lines. And then I'm going with my bone folder and adding a little bit of pressure to spread that glue. This is the underside of my box, and you'll know that it is because it has these straight edges with a little wedge cut out. And this is the top of my box, and you'll know because it has that extra panel. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put glue on the 2 tabs that are at the end of the long side. So these 2 tabs. I'm positioning my box so that it's nice and square. You can use your craft mat for this. If it's straight on the horizontal line and straight on the vertical line, that squares up your box. I'm going to fold down my short side onto those tabs. I'm just making sure that that cut edge is right along the score line of my tab, nice and straight. I'm pinching my corners to make sure that that glue takes. And I'm going to do that at the other end as well. The 2 same tabs at the other end, I'm putting glue on them, and I'm folding that end piece down. And then I'm putting glue on those 2 tabs on either side of the short end. I'm just going to rotate so that it's easier for me to see. I'm gluing that tab into the side of the long panel, like so. And I'm doing that on both sides. And then I'm going to do that at the other end as well, just putting glue on the tabs and just gluing them in. So then I have the pieces for my internal box. The bottom of my box is 3 panels, and then I have both ends of my box. So I'm just putting glue on that bottom tab from the score line to the edge. And then I'm positioning it so that the score lines on the right and the left match up. And the cut edge of my panel is right up against that score line. I'm going to do that on the other side as well. So next I'm putting glue on those large tabs on either side. So I'm bringing up each side of my center panel. Then I'm bringing up that bottom flap. I'm doing that on both sides. So the cut edge of this panel is right against the score line on my tab. I'm going in with my bone folder and I'm just spreading that glue. So this is the smaller inside box, and this is the larger outside box, and it fits right inside. So I'm putting glue all along one of the long tabs, so from the score line to the edge. And then I'm placing the cut edge of my inner box right along the tab. So I want the 2 edges to coincide with the 2 score lines, and I'm gluing down the cut edge of my box right to the score line of that frame piece. So next I'm putting glue on the other long tab. I'm tucking it behind my smaller box, and I'm gluing the sides of that box in place. Then I have the tabs at both ends. I'm just putting glue on them. I'm gluing that cut edge right to the score line on the tab. And then I'm putting glue and doing the same thing on the tab that's on the other end as well. So next I have the panels for the back of my box. I'm going to reinforce them as well. These are cut in 2 parts, so I'm going to double them up as I did for the side panels. Putting glue on the underside of the smaller one, and I'm gluing it to the back of one of the larger ones. And then I'm putting glue from the end of the shorter panel all the way to the end of the longer one, and then gluing my longer one right next to it. And the top and the bottom have to line up. I'm flipping my piece over. I'm putting glue from the end of the shorter panel all the way to the end, and then gluing that panel. So I have my box upside down, and I'm pulling all of my flaps away, and I'm putting glue on the bottom of my box, and then I'm taking my reinforcement panel, I'm just lowering it in, making sure that all of my tabs are pulled away from it. I'm pressing in the center, and then I'm just folding down on those flaps to make sure that that reinforcement piece fits nicely. Flip this around, and I'm just spreading that glue with my bone folder. I'm putting glue all along those side flaps on both sides, and then just gluing them down. I've rotated my piece, and I'm just gluing down my 2 end flaps. And then I have my panels for the back, so I'm just putting glue on the underside, and I'm gluing it down. And then I have my shorter panel to finish it off. I'm putting glue on the underside of it, and then I'm just gluing it down to cover up the rest of my panel. So then I have the door pieces. I'm folding down on the score line for the hinge of the door. Then I have my piece of acetate. Now this is cricket acetate, so it has a protective sheath on both sides, and I'm just removing that protective layer. And so now I have some double-sided tape, and so I'm just putting some double-sided tape around the perimeter on all 4 sides. And then I'm removing the liner from my double-sided tape, and I'm placing my acetate. So I'm just placing my acetate on top of my double-sided tape to cover that opening. And then I'm adding double-sided tape pretty much on the same spot as I did before on top of the acetate layer. So before I glue down my frame, I'm going to install my handle piece. So this is silver foil craft board, and I'm just folding down on all the score lines that are on the larger of the two handle pieces, like so. And then I'm threading from the tip to the first score line into my frame piece. I'm doing that for both of them. I'm putting glue on the underside of that pointed piece, go from the score line to the end. And then I'm folding that part down and gluing it onto the surface of my frame piece. And I'm putting glue on the underside of the rectangle and just gluing it underneath my handle to make it a little more substantial and to keep it in place. So next I have this silver piece, and I'm gluing this white piece to the back, trying to find the middle point between my handles, and I'm putting a piece of double-sided tape there, releasing the liner on my double-sided tape, and then I'm gluing this little piece down with the white side up and the silver side down. Glue it as straight as I can. Then I'm removing the liner from the double-sided tape that's on my acetate, and I'm flipping my frame piece over. I have the hinge on my right hand side and I have the handle on my left hand side. I'm matching up the bottom corners and then just gluing it down all the way around. I'm exerting a little extra pressure here where my handle is. So now I'm putting glue on my hinge, so from the score line to the edge, and then I'm gluing it to the top here on the inside of that inner box. And then I have these 3/8 of an inch Velcro dots, and I'm going to put one right here underneath that little closer piece. So there's my fire extinguisher in its cabinet.